Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you guys for coming in. Wow, there's so many familiar faces in here, and that's pretty awesome. So good to hear. So we're going to talk about setting expectations with your integration partner as an in-house integration team. So I will be serving the role of integration partner. I work with AVI-SPL. And then Chris Dechter will be serving the role of the in-house team with University of Wyoming. That's not what we discussed this morning. Oh, okay. Darn it. So I'll do an intro on myself real quick, and then I'll hand it over to Chris. But I'm Jimmie Singleton. I am the manager of state, local, and education for AVI-SPL. So I cover North America. So I travel all over the country, and I talk to different universities and colleges, and I help share trends across those and make sure that everybody's on the same page. And I've worked with Chris a few times, so I'll pass it over to you.
Good morning. So I'm Chris Dechter, University of Wyoming. Jimmie and I started this conversation. You reached out. I've known Jimmie for years, and he reached out, about 6 months ago, and you said you were looking for general feedback on what sort of things universities should be providing to integrators and what should integrators be looking for from universities as they do projects. And this kind of started a conversation. I was like, you know what this sounds like is a conference presentation. So now you guys are all stuck here, and we are standing between you and lunch. So the doors are barred and you cannot leave. So, by the way, thanks for everyone sitting this close to the front. This is kind of awkwardly condensed, but yeah. So so we're going to be talking through the process from both sides. And if you don't know Jimmie's background, also he worked at two different universities. So he's got the higher ed background as well as the integrator side. So it's helpful to see that. And we're going to talk through some of the different types of projects and the different perspectives and just kind of get some tips and tricks in there. Definitely want to hear from you all on like what works, what doesn't. And then I've got a ton of documentation I can show on the sort of stuff that I provide. We get better at it every time. And what I keep telling my team is like, hey, another 5-10 years of this, we'll have this figured out. But yeah, so rule of thumb on that, you cannot provide too much information. So, all right. Okay. You're doing this one, right?
Take this one, yeah. We're going to kind of talk through different layers of this. The first step being relationships and processes, like Chris had mentioned, knowing who you're working with, and then the processes that you follow along the way. How detailed are you as a customer to the integrator as well as the in-house team? We'll talk through capital projects, large projects, small projects, kind of the differences between them, when you should pull in an integrator, when you can do it in-house, what should you be doing in-house, and then managing multiple integrators, and then some best practices at the end for some tips and tricks. So relationships, I'll start with this one. I'll pass over to you, Chris. But relationships are kind of the core of everything we do, obviously, right? Even with your manufacturer partners and your integration partners, if there's no, talkability back and forth between the two of you, then what's the point of working together, right? People work with the people they like to work with, and obviously their company provides value and you provide some value to them and whatever it may be, but there needs to be a working conversation available between the two. But both parties have to be really open to that conversation, open to feedback from each other. It's not always great. I spend most of my time getting yelled at and buying people lunch. So it's a process that we go through, but then I also spend my time yelling at our own customers and telling them what could be better from their end and stuff like that, right? So we can work better together. When we're working on bids, there's a whole different process for working on bids with like capital projects, new construction. You may not be involved at all. You may know something, you may know a lot. It's different every single time. So that's where your relationships with your integration partners can help kind of bridge that gap a little bit between projects that maybe you're not as involved with. You have anything to add here on relationships?
So one thing there, sometimes, and this is scary, but all of you at universities have been part of this. The first time you hear about some burgeoning capital project may be from a local integrator who says, hey, I just saw a bunch of stuff come out to bid. This does not look like your stuff. What is this? There's been some of those I've had to pull back. I've had to steal from the integrator and basically like, sorry, this isn't gonna be your job, but this is all wrong. But having that relationship, having somebody feel comfortable on that it's an advantage, and it's nice to know it's out there. They're watching that stuff. By the way, and if you have not built that good relationship with your internal facilities team at your universities, please do so. Mike, when's the presentation?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock today. Mike Peterson and a bunch of other folks will be talking about that exact process of going over to the facilities group, tackling them, holding them down, and tickling them until they let you into those meetings. So, as I understand, is that pretty close?
Pretty close.
Okay, good enough. So build that relationship on your campus as well. But having that relationship with an integrator, they might give you that heads up. They might save you 6 months, a year's worth of work being like, well, I don't know what this stuff is, but there's something out to bid. Do you know anything about this? Oftentimes it's one of those kind of like slightly off-campus projects or something, or we're remodeling this building downtown. And you're like, I have no idea what's going on with that. Who's supporting it? And they're like, well, you? So, yes. Anything else on here? No. Okay. This is a good question. I don't have an answer for it. So. Communication. All right, this is you.
Awesome. Yeah, so like Chris was saying earlier, you know, like his documentation and stuff like that, and he can show off a lot of that and how detailed and how good it is. And I think we've had this conversation, and if you've worked with integrators, you've had this conversation 100 times of like, well, if we just communicated more, if you just told us more what you were doing, and then we go back and forth and we both argue about it, and then we both agree that neither of us were talking to each other enough, or not giving each other enough information or whatever it is. And we know how to fix it, but sometimes we don't always take the action to do it, whether it's from the integration team or the in-house team. But knowing exactly where responsibilities start and stop is a big portion of this, right? If you are taking anything on as the in-house team, if you're going to do 30% of the work, we need to know exactly where that 30% goes. That way we can charge for the remaining 70% that we need to accomplish, right? And go back and forth with us, fight with us, you know, and say, hey, we don't need 18 project management hours because we have a project manager in-house that's doing all this work. So you can push back on us and help us with that. Shared design workloads, right? If we're putting a design engineer on it and then that design engineer never walks your campus, why are you being charged for design engineer hours, right? Ask those questions, and don't be afraid to ask those questions. But that goes back to that relationship with your integrator, right? Is having the ability to say, hey, I'm getting charged 20, I'm not seeing 20, and ask those more. And then obviously the consistent communication back and forth. I know you have a process for how many times you visit your integrators on campus each day and whatnot, but maybe if you want to talk about that a little bit.
I love this handoff mic thing. So on the full design sort of thing from the in-house team, this one for our integrator partners in the room, I see you. You can nod your heads. This makes integrators squirrely because having someone do that work for them isn't always done right or complete, or lots of stuff missing there. So I get that. So maybe that's more of an opportunity to kind of build that relationship. That said, you have to like over document everything and over explain everything and just kind of go through it, make sure everyone is on the same page. And there will be some design work from the integrator side because they're going to want to get that into their workflows, into their software. I get that. It's part of the documentation process. It's part of their install process. So let them go with that. Double check their work because I have caught mistakes and they've caught mistakes in some of my stuff. And I appreciate that. Like audio lines that go nowhere. And they're like, how are you getting audio to that amplifier? I'm like, well, it's wireless. So figure it out. But no, I forget to draw a line and they'll catch it, but same time it'll come back and they'll have the miscount on speakers or something like that. So double check everybody's work. Use the old Ronald Reagan method of trust but verify, and so on both sides. Hopefully they will trust you but verify your work, and you can trust them but also verify their work too. So on the shared design, to Jimmie's point about knowing where that scope ends, where it begins and ends. If you're asking someone to come in and do like purely like install wiring, terminations and getting stuff ready to go, and then you're going to come in and do programming. That's not what I just said is nowhere near enough information to do that. And you'll hear that a lot. Oh, we'll take care of that. Well, are we verifying just signal flow? Are we setting up a test program? Are we doing any sort of network configurations, device configuration? You have to get into the weeds on all of that stuff. All of this will take several cycles of working with an integrator or different integrators to kind of get that process down. As I said, with my team, I joke 5 or 10 years we'll get this figured out. But every time we get better at it, sometimes things go horribly wrong. And sometimes those things that go horribly wrong that has your facilities PMs barking at you are simply, and this was my mistake, I ordered the wrong model screen. I specified the wrong part number for a screen. That got handed off to the integrator. They just ordered right off of my bill of materials. Thanks for double checking, guys. And so those showed up and then they played, hey, we have the wrong screens. I'm like, great, turn them around and get the right ones. But there's some back and forth on that. So work with them on that. And I'm happy to be the first one to stand up and say mea culpa, that was on me, even though it really wasn't. But yes, it sort of was. Started my design, but the whole thing. So anyway, be open about that.
For this setting for expectations, do you do a responsibility matrix? How do you document it?
We're getting there. I'm not that formal yet. I would love to have that broken down to that level, but that's check back in 5 years. So yeah, appreciate that. from our consultant friends who have lots of time to go through to that level because there's contracts involved. So yes, come on. So
Yeah, we just sent it to our lawyer.
yes. So and yes, there are, to that point, there are universities I can point to some who actually go to that level, and I appreciate that. And so we're always striving to be better. But yeah, but to your point, in writing, get that stuff in writing in an email, even if it's a phone call, follow up. Hey, here's what we discussed. So
I wasn't trying to like put a time out there. I was just trying to like
no, it's a good point. Yeah.
what's your documentation process there to bring clarity.
Mm-hmm.
You can't write it down some way. You don't have clarity if you can't write it down.
Right.
Even if it's just an email.
Well, and if it's not in writing, you can't hold them to that contract too. So yes. All right, where are we here? Project sign-off. I'm gonna hand this one off to Jimmie. My method for project sign-off is, looks good, get the hell off my campus. So we'll take it from there. But there have been some issues on like, none of these cables were terminated correctly. Who's coming back to do that? And get into a whole bunch of like billable hour pissing matches and stuff. So, and generally we'll get some nods from everybody in the room here. It's a lot easier for the internal teams to just go figure it out and fix it and be done with it today rather than do the whole, we'll be back on Thursday for a service call. And I get that, but yeah, it's fun. So.
Yeah, and that's the main thing I kind of want to touch on here with this one is, just because you can fix it in-house and maybe you do fix it in-house, and that's fine if it's quicker, and I fully understand that. But the main goal is still bringing it up to your integration partner, right? And saying, hey, here's the problem that I just fixed that I shouldn't have had to fix. So that next time we come through, we know that, right? And we're not having to, go back and have the same issue every single time. So addressing those problems immediately as they come up, not even waiting for project sign off, right? Don't wait till the last day. Come in there halfway through our project and tell us we're doing it wrong. That's totally fine. That's what we're there for, is to fix these problems as we go. And then we get less into that billable hours after the fact, and we don't have to do change orders and have all this back and forth. And honestly, although we're asking for more money and it probably seems like we're making more money, it's more annoying for us. We'd rather just do it right the first time and not have to come back and do a change order. It's just more stress for us. And in special cases too, looking at someone like Chris who lives in Wyoming, our nearest office is Denver, right? So we're driving 3.5 hours to get there. Whether it's for 4 hours or whether it's for a 4-day project, it doesn't change that trip, right? It's the same amount of time, the same amount of stress on our people to go back out there to fix an issue. So we'd rather do it while we're there, and we can extend that trip rather than making a whole other trip up for it. So, when is an issue small enough for the in-house team or big enough for the integrator? I'll pass it back to you if there's any sort of cutoff that you have in-house.
Yeah, so my cutoff for that one is if it involves multiple spaces. If there's one room where something's wrong, I'll take care of it. I don't care. I'm just going to get it done. It's when we find, we have the same problem in 6 other spaces right now. I'm going to make that one a service call. I may rig it so it works for a day or two so people can teach their classes. I don't want to impact that. But as you all well know, a lot of these projects go up until, and classes start tomorrow morning sort of thing. So you don't have that luxury of, we'll be there on Thursday. It also gets squirrely because in a lot of integration firms, that'll be a change from whether it's the install team to now the service team who's handling that, which means now you have different people involved. And I get to start all the way over again with how to work on campus and where to park and how to find things. And it's a whole treat. So I ran into one recently, and I won't name the integrator, but an integrator. Apparently had the people who were there on campus were not savvy to like RG59 and RG6, and RG6 is not one better than RG59, and those are different types of cables, and you have to terminate them in different ways with different crimps and a whole thing. So I had like 30 rooms where that was just wrong, and it was just like, all right, well, I'm just gonna go fix it. So we just knocked it out. So, and I will just file that one away under the next time they bid, remember this. So yeah. So for integrators out there, you may not get direct feedback on some of that stuff, but we remember. So.
And for that, also ask if you're the integrator.
If you're the integrator, go back to your customer and say, what did we do wrong? Consistently ask your customers what you're doing wrong so that you don't get put in that black box under there. I worked at a university where we would blacklist some people every once in a while, right? And we'd go, try again in 6 months, buddy. We'll talk to you then. And that doesn't always work, right? It doesn't give them good feedback. And then in 6 months, they forget, right? They've done 100 other projects since then. They've forgotten what they messed up the first time. We can solve it. We also, as the integrators, have to follow up with you and make sure that it's staying well. So I'll talk through some capital projects real quick, just so everybody, if you haven't worked on the integration side or you're not as involved with capital projects as you'd like to be, just an understanding of what integrators deal with on a capital project, right? And it's quite a different approach than what you'd probably face on the inside, right? So new buildings going up, GC gets awarded that building and you are maybe not involved at all. You don't know. It's 6 blocks down the road. You don't really know what's going on over there. And then the integrator comes in, they bid it with the GC, or they bid it through the electrical contractor under the GC. There's 3 layers of people before we get to the GC. And then the GC is talking with the architect's office, and the architect's office is not talking to the in-house team. And then at the end of the day, we're all like, okay, no one's talking to each other, right? So that's where we can kind of go back to that, lean on that relationship you have, so that if you are an integrator that's bidding on it and you notice, hey, this is a Crestron build because a consultant came in, even though we love consultants, no shame. Yeah, so, they come in and they put Crestron all in, but because you've worked with the main campus, that they're an entirely Extron campus, right? That should be a red flag for us as the integrator to say, okay, well, something's not right here. And then we reach out to the in-house team and say, hey, just making sure, are you aware of this project? Does it matter if there are different standards, something like that? That can go a lot back to that relationship, and I think it stands a lot of value for the integrator to say, hey, we really care about what you have to support after the fact, even though we're glad to sell a service contract and make some more money. But it doesn't work, right? Because we're not as close to campus. We're not going to be as quick as you are when there's an issue that arises. So understanding some of those who those stakeholders are, obviously, GCs are there to bid a project and win that project. And then their job at that point is to save as much money as humanly possible, right? So all the way down to the electrical contractor, to the AV integrator, every layer in that, any bit of money they save goes to the GC's pockets. Any money they lose goes into a change order to the school, or they have to eat that cost. So understanding where that GC fits into this project can change a lot about how I know a lot of you can end up not liking your integrators because of a capital project, and it's not always the integrator's fault, even though there is some times where it can be. And then obviously the in-house team and departmental members. So big part on that is just making sure that this communication triangle happens. It's pretty rare that all 3 of these people are in the room together, but if you can have at least one of them talking to each other, then the 3 of you can share information, no matter where it's at. Do you have anything to add here?
So this one almost, depending on how you lay it out, I know Jimmie put this together just kind of to show it's an equilateral triangle and everyone has equal parts in this. And as many of us know, it doesn't really play out that way all the time. This would be an ideal world where everyone's at the table, everyone's sharing information, it's great, and everyone's on the same page. But a lot of times what we see is maybe just like that bottom line is there, and then like once a year, they'll reach out to the one on top sort of thing. Or you may find I got surprised by a law school thing where we're doing a big law school remodel, all this stuff. And I'm like, what is all of this? And the architect basically kicked the IT team off the job site. And I'm like, fine. So we walked, and that building was commissioned incorrectly with a lot of broken stuff that was not done the right way, didn't meet campus standards, was not supportable. And then there was a huge draft of change orders that came back to fix all of that. I was like, sorry for me trying to help and save you hundreds of thousands of dollars, but enjoy. So hopefully you're involved in those. Like I said, it's been some relationship building just internally for me at Wyoming. I've only been there 4 years, but we're getting way better. So now the campus architect reaches out whenever he needs random ass adapters for his home office sort of thing. So at least he knows who I am and what we can do. So that's good. So we're getting there. But he calls and wants to put projectors in the football stadium. Like, that's not how this works. But yeah, tell you all about that. Anyway, so this is kind of an ideal scenario. It won't always play out that way, but you can kind of try to back channel some things. But if you start back channeling, because there are contracts involved, make sure you loop in everybody and CC all these people, and otherwise they get very upset. So some are very accommodating and recognize that everyone's here for the same end result of having a successful project. Everyone close it out, get paid, and go home. Others not so much, and I've had to let some projects burn. So yeah, it happens. No, this was me. This is me. Sorry. Okay, so this has been my life the last 2 years. I think I've talked with a lot of you about this. I have a project going on right now, and we're in our second year of it, a little under 2 years, where I have a giant money bin full of money I go swimming in every morning, and then I take some of that out and I go spend it on campus, which sounds great until you realize how many spaces. I'm trying to do 150 spaces in 2 years. And we're getting close, but it's a process. So at a certain point, you're gonna have to recognize, as much as I would love my internal team to do all this work, we're just not physically capable of it. We don't have the personnel hours. We don't have the resources to just surge 25 people, have them on campus, and knock out 2 or 3 rooms a week for the next 2 years. It's not there. So this is where it's an opportunity to leverage external integration firms as a partner to accomplish these projects. And in my case, so far leveraging 4 of them. I've had bid walks, and as Jimmie mentioned, University of Wyoming is a bit remote, 2.5 hours from Denver, but depending on which side you're on. But I've had site walks with 14 integrators there. So they're hungry. The interest is there. We're turning out good projects. There's interest in partnering and doing that. So we're getting a good response. But it's having to then go through that process and find the right partners to actually work on those. And we deliberately bid out every round of those every 3 months. And I've had several integrators ask, why are you going through all this work? We can stand up a master service agreement or something. I'll be brutally honest, I have no interest in that. I will burn those extra admin hours to go through that bid and review process to make sure that A, I'm getting the best pricing possible, B, I'm getting the best end result, and C, that I'm being as above board and honest as I can in the way I'm spending the money. So there's no question of like, oh yeah, we've got our friends over here and we're just going to them all the time. So it is a deliberate choice to do that. And I've even had our procurement officer reach out and just be like, can we simplify this? No, it's going to be a pain in the ass every time, but now we've got the documentation. We're a public institution. Those are public records. Anyone can request them and go through, and they want to review all that stuff. So it's all there. So all that to be said. So on the first one here is just based on that sheer workload. When you're trying to do too many rooms, I need 15, I need 20, I need 25, I need 30 rooms done in 2 months. It's possible, but you're not going to do it with your team of 5 or 6 in-house sort of thing. The other one is on specialty projects, and I did one of these just recently where an AVI-SPL bid, but did not win, sorry, on a boardroom, it was just a boardroom, and it was a room about this size, but we all have these boardrooms on campus. And as part of that, we were going to do an LED video wall, and my team internally has not done LED video walls. I have done only one of those in the past, and I'm like, I'm just going to farm this one out and just that aspect of the install, because that's a specialty aspect of the room. Everything else in the room, the cameras, the mics, and the system and all that was all done internally, and that went fine. But that was a recognition of like, this is going to cost a little bit more, but I'm going to do this because I know the end result will be better. Also, the last time I did video walls, being a couple of years ago, means I know that's going to be me on a ladder on that last day, dialing in those little screws, set screws, and like getting back down and looking at it, going back up and making a little adjustment. And that's my life for the next 3 days, and I don't want to do that. So I'll pay somebody else to do that, and I can come in every half hour or so and just kind of criticize. So, to the earlier comments here on like who's doing what, and this is where the in-house team still has a lot of work to do. It's not a free handoff on this sort of stuff. So there's still going to be a lot of work, the physical labor as well as also the admin side, and a lot of that coordinating with the departments on campus. Your facilities team, your architects on campus, if they're involved, depending on where they are, the other groups of facilities who are not part of that facilities team, but they're also doing other things. The networking team, who's separate from the telecom team, who's separate from the cabling team. It's a whole thing. So getting them all on the same page is often a treat, and that's where your kind of role is to run interference and all that stuff. So as much as possible, it's like at this point it can almost seem like it's more work, because you're going to be you're involved for you're there for the care and feeding of the integrator who's there, and you have to provide them as much information as possible so they can just get out of their way and let them do their work, but they need all that stuff. So, and I'll talk about it here in a minute, but like, my process is to check in with them routinely, so I'm a day ahead of what they need. So we don't find out, oh, they're working on something right now, there's a problem. By the time they let you know that next morning, they're now another day behind, and the schedule starts slipping, and things go awry from there. So, and we'll talk about design documentation and all that. So, good. I can't remember if there's anything else on this.
No, I'll say one thing real quick. The one thing I was just talking with Mike before we came into this session, but we meet a lot of newer teams who are getting new into in-house integration, right? They want to build out the team. They want to do everything in-house. We're all for it. I don't think integrators are against that. We're not going to argue with you on that. It makes sense for having that support on campus, but there is a time where you will need an integrator, right? And if like an LED video wall is anything LED or anything specialized, that's a great example of like, you're probably going to do that once or twice on campus, whereas our company's done that hundreds of times across the nation, right? You can bring in people who are really good at that one thing and then let them knock it out, and then you pay for it and you don't have to deal with the headache of it, and it doesn't waste your time or anything like that. So knowing, there's a place where, you can do a lot in-house, but knowing when to pull in.
One thing on that real quick. For those of you who have in-house teams, doing this is not it's not saying your team's not capable. So make sure you pass that on to your team, because having been someone on that team and seeing that sort of work happen, but also now having my own team, explaining to them this is why it's happening. A lot of times they'll recognize that. It just comes down to just sheer effort and resources and availability sort of thing. But it's not like, oh, you guys aren't good enough to do this, so I'm going to bring in the experts sort of thing. There's still that if, I have a friend who refers to it as briefcase syndrome, where somebody coming in from the outside with a briefcase is now suddenly the expert, whereas the internal resource may not be. So it's a whole thing. But just be aware of that like people internally may feel like they're being slighted or something because you need to kind of go out to an external resource. It's absolutely not the case. So just make sure you communicate that clearly. So sure. Small projects. This is kind of our bread and butter. What's our next slide say? Yes. Can I speak for the integrators in the room? So our integrator partners, please correct me. You can shout and throw tomatoes and things. Y'all hate, I need one room. Please come all the way to my campus and build one room for me and then leave. That's a huge time waster. It's a huge resource, kind of slog to do that. So a lot of times those sorts of things will be done by the internal team, but know an integrator, especially if you've built that relationship, built that partnership, they're there as a resource for you. Jimmie also talks about like the idea of leveraging integrators as like kind of a design resource, I guess, to reach out for some ideas and some things. So be aware that's there. But on some of these small projects, don't push too hard. I can knock out a conference room in a day, but if I need 10 conference rooms, can I do 10 conference rooms in 10 days? Probably. What are things going to look like on day 11, 12 sort of thing? So if you're looking at that level of project load, it may be worth starting that conversation with an integrator on like, let's figure this process out and work together, and who's going to be doing what and what can we do and prep and work in partnership and that sort of thing. So I know some schools will hire integration firms strictly as just like labor. Come in and just like install all the cabling, hang all the projectors and speakers in these rooms, and then that's all we need from you. Easy peasy. Others will want full turnkey systems. It really depends on what you want on your campus. So, and then box sales. This can be easy or it can be a real pain, which is strange because almost depending on the individual company, it can be super easy to do box sales all day long, and other times it is like pulling teeth to just get pricing out of stuff. And I don't have information on why that is, but I don't know. It's just an odd thing. So.
And I'll add to this, that design portion of it, right? There's definitely things where if you use someone, if you use an integrator and you're asking them tons of questions and you're asking them for line drawings, that's when we start to say, okay, well, cut a check and then we'll talk about that. But there are plenty of things that you can get for free, right? There's plenty of conversations you should be having with your account managers or even their design engineers that you work with. If it's a true trusted partnership, if you say, hey, I'm planning on installing X model of TV, they may say, hey, I just want you to know, like, some things have been going on lately, warranties aren't great or something like that, and they can offer some recommendations. If you say, no, I don't want to do that, that's fine. But let them, push back on you and say, hey, I just want you to look at this. They should be educating you. If you have a good integration partner, they should be coming to you and saying, hey, this is new, this is exciting. You should know about this thing before it actually gets brought into your space. So if they're not doing that, push back on them and tell them they could be doing that better because they get plenty of notice ahead of time. Okay, multiple partners. This is one of my favorite slides here. So should you have more than one integrator? Yes. Integrators don't always love saying that. Obviously, sole sourcing would be amazing, and we get all your projects, and you give us millions of dollars, and that sounds great. We have more than one customer. You should have more than one integrator. We're not solely helping you all the time. We have other things that come up. We all have different specialties as integrators. We might have different, groups within our company that do different things really well. Sometimes we're busy with other projects. Sometimes we have too much on our plate, and that's fine. That's awesome. It's great for us. But it does mean that it affects you, right? So having a few trusted partners that you can go back to and you can lean on, as Chris said, he puts a lot of stuff out to bid. So he's got a lot of partners that reach out and say, hey, we want to do this. And that's great. You should have all of that, but knowing you got to share the love a little bit, right? Spread it out, feed everybody, make sure everybody has a good time. And then you can have the few that you really, really like working with and have a good relationship with.
Yeah, and on that last point, and Jimmie used the phrase share the love, which is the same one I use for that sort of thing. You have to kind of be a little, to my university colleagues out here, you have to be a little strategic on this, and sometimes you have to kind of put your thumb on those scales. A bit of inside baseball for the integrators out there. Price is not the thing we're looking at a lot of times. I have 10 points that we look at for bid evaluations. Price it's scored highly on there, but price, if you max it out, it's worth 25%. So your bottom dollar on the estimate is 25%. There's the other 75% are those value adds and our experience with you and the capabilities and scheduling and all sorts of other things that go into that. So all that to be said is there's a lot of flexibility in there for me as the in-house resource to kind of put my thumb on the scale at certain times and kind of try to balance the load. So the same round of projects doesn't go to the series of projects doesn't go to the same integrator 5 times in a row. And then other people lose interest because, well, we haven't worked there in 2 years sort of thing. So trying to keep people involved means also that saves you time. If you do have one of those kind of, I don't want to call it an emergency project, but let's call it a shorter time frame project, and maybe they were just there 2 months ago and they're familiar with campus and where things are and all that, it makes it easier to spin somebody up for that sort of thing. Hey, I really need help on these next 3 rooms that have to be done by the end of the month sort of thing. That's much more capable than, yeah, well, last time we talked was 4 years ago and I need this by the end of the month. Good luck with that. So, kind of maintain that. You have to kind of balance multiple integrators and just kind of keep them all involved. But I have not been successful with that with all 14 we've had come to campus, but I've got 4 that I'm working with, so it's good to know that they're out there. So, yeah. All right, best practices. With that said, to ensure success. So I think we should say this is our best opportunity for success, not a guarantee. Okay, from the in-house team, that's Jimmie. No, that's me. I talk about this a lot. Don't give up the knowledge work. Even if you are going to have an integration firm, I want someone to come in. I want you to design these spaces. I want you to program them. I want you to commission them. The knowledge work is still, that's your responsibility, by which I mean maybe it's just a high level concept. Maybe it is the full design. Maybe it's a high level design, but not with all the details. Maybe it's specifying even down to like what brands of product you like or what ecosystem you work in. The more information you can hand off, even if it's a couple of sentences of we need a conference, we need 10 conference rooms of this size. We like these model displays. We like these types of projectors. We like this control ecosystem. We use this for network switches. This is how we do our IPs. Do we do internal, external? Even if you're not doing it and you're just writing that up and here's a paragraph of stuff, that makes life so much easier. But you're still in charge. You're still driving that project because what you're going to get at the end of the day, it may be done and commissioned and programmed by somebody else, but it's to your standards, to your campus environment. So it seems that much more familiar, not just to you and your support team, but to the campus clients who come in to use it. If you can hand off, programming files or device configs or any of that stuff, all the better, even if you're not doing it. But keep that knowledge work in-house so you're in charge of it. If you're one of those folks at a school, and I've been there too, where I didn't have anything to do with this building, I didn't put it together, I don't know what the heck this is terrible, well, you're still the one who has to own it for the next 10 or 15 years. So get out in front of those as best you can, or you have to go back and fix them all one at a time, which is annoying. So check back with me in 10 years. Jimmie mentioned this, the second point here early on. This is my model. So 8:30 in the morning, we do a quick stand-up. 8:30 in the morning, we're checking in with the integrator on campus. That gives them enough time to get to campus, get started, check in with their site foreman or their site supervisor and kind of like, how are things going? What are you guys working on today? Where are you today? Also, if you're not aware of this, check with your campus safety office, your campus PD office. They will want to know where external contractors are. It is a safety thing. If there's a safety issue on campus, they need to know where people are, who's their point of contact, where they're working. So you need to be on top of that. I also like to check back mid-afternoon, about 2 o'clock or so. It's early enough that people haven't started to wrap up for the day, but they're starting to get there because 2 o'clock is close enough to like 4 or 5. They can start to see the end of the day. But there's also enough time if there's a crisis to address it. There's also enough time if there's something they're going to need the next morning. That gives you enough time before all the facilities guys disappear at like 3:15 because they all claim to have been there since 6 in the morning. But yeah. We know that's the case. But by, if you're talking with, a lead install technician from our friends at AVI-SPL, and they're saying, hey, we're having trouble with this thing here. Can we get somebody from facilities to look at it? 2 or 2:30 in the afternoon is early enough for me to reach out to facilities. And if an electrician, let's say it's an electrician or a plumber or somebody, if they can't come over right then, they can come over first thing in the morning and at 6 a.m. when they're there. To be fair, the trades guys usually are there at 6 in the morning. So anyone else have trades guys who have moved to 410s and it's like a ghost town on Fridays? So, okay, it's interesting. So I think they forgot that the 410s thing, they need to split like Mondays and Fridays or something. But anyway, so. But it's early enough in the day to be able to get some of those things addressed or have it ready the next morning so you can keep your project schedules. Because if you wait until the next morning, then it may be the next day after that before someone can get there, and now you're 2 days behind. So just getting out in front of those. So this is my rule. It's just get there in the morning, check in with them, and then check in with them mid-afternoon before they leave, just to kind of keep an eye on where things are and what they're doing and what they need from you. So, because a lot of times that stuff will come to you the next day. Case in point for me, we're doing a project right now, and the ceiling microphones, believe it or not, are the wrong color because people order black lay-in ceiling microphones, I guess. They exist. You can look them up. I think there's one out here, actually. And I was like, well, those need to be white. And they're like, yeah, we'll change them out. I'm like, are you going to do that today, or are you going to wait till tomorrow? And it's kind of like, well, because it was like 1:30 in the afternoon, we're talking about that process started that day, so we're a day ahead of that. So it just saves you a little bit of time. So that's my rule of thumb. And then for my project manager, I have him do the same thing. He drops off his kids on the way into campus, stops by the office. He goes out, and then he's already visited with the integrators before he comes back for our morning meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning for the whole team. And then he can give us updates on what they're doing, sort of thing. So it's just nice. We're starting the day, and we already have an update on where people are and what they're doing. So, yeah, easy check-ins for that.
Right on. Yeah, and then from the integration side, obviously crystal clear scope of work, right? If you don't want to do the crystal clear scope of work, you follow our system. That's how it works, right? We're going to give you the exact thing that we give to people when they say, I don't care what you put in, just make the job happen, right? This is what we're looking for. And that's what we're going to give you is just some thing that has everything on it, right? Design engineering hours after the fact, project engineers, project managers. It's going to be loaded up because we're accounting for what we don't know in that project. So the more crystal clear you can be on it, the better your price is going to be. And then the better we know that nothing's going to fall through the cracks because we know exactly where you start and stop, and we know exactly where we start and stop. So we know exactly where to pick up. And then next thing is bring problems up as they arise. I mentioned it a couple of times, right? But I get a lot of calls after the fact, a month after a project, and I just get berated. They're like, well, last time you were here, and then they give me a Google Drive of the things they hate about me. And I'm like, okay, I didn't hear about this from the account manager. I didn't hear about this from your salesperson is the one that is your point of contact, right? They're the ones whose paycheck is affected when you don't like a project, right? So those people should be in constant communication, and their project manager should be constantly communicating with them and staying in touch with them. So bring it up as it happens, right? If something bad is happening, tell us it's happening so that we can fix it immediately rather than waiting a couple months or the next time we're at a conference and you say, well, we don't want to work with you anymore because you messed up this, and this. So constant communication, as always, is the name of the game. And then we'll do the same thing with you. We try to, at least. If there's something going wrong, we'll say, hey, this is just facilities never made it into the room. We got 10 things that we can't do today because of it, or whatever it may be. Questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
To that last point there on the communication, and kudos to the AVI-SPL team on this one. My account manager reached out on one after they did not win another bid. So they had won one previously and then didn't win that round. And the question was just, we'd like feedback. What can we do better for the next round? And I appreciate that. I've had 14 integrators come to campus. I've had one reach out and ask that question. So for integrators in the room, that's an easy phone call. Please follow up. Just like, we didn't win this one. That's fine. What can we do to maybe win the next one? Or what can we do better on our proposal? So, free advice there. Because I appreciated that. That was just general feedback, and it was an opportunity to just share on that. So, damn it, I had another one and I've forgotten. So I've confused myself. So we'll take questions, and while we're taking questions, I will dig up some documentation and stuff. So Jessica has a question, and Jimmie, I'm going to hand this to you so you can MC.
Jess Sunset, I'm with LG, but I was on the channel side selling projects to higher ed for a long time, and just 2 best practices, every project that went really well. 2 things. Number 1, we had a weekly meeting with all the stakeholders. A lot of the schools I worked with, unfortunately, couldn't meet
Probably.
twice a day, like they were too busy to send a project manager a check
did
on
have
the
a point
project,
there,
so we would do a standing meeting, just a half hour with everyone weekly. And then the second thing we did as an integrator was provide dailies on a shared site that anyone at the college could read from the field. So at the end of every day, our lead foreman or whoever would upload a daily report so that everyone that wanted eyes on it, they couldn't make it to the job site. But that was required. I think that saved a lot of issues. And then the other thing that a couple schools did that was so nice, they provided really just like the badging requirements, security requirements, phone numbers, logistics, where to park, a campus map, all of that up front. So if we were bringing in subs or programmers from out of town, we could easily distribute that. So those three things made for a great partnership and way more successful projects.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I mean, like integrators too, we use so many different layers, right? So programming, especially if you have a specific type of programming on campus, if you're like a really heavy QSys campus or something like that, right? And we're pulling in a sub who's really good at QSys programming, it's not always the same people. And you know this as well, right? From the install team to the services team could be different people. So like as much of that information that we can collect as possible beforehand, that we just feel like an extension of your team, that we know that information, the better we can serve you as an integrator. Doug?
Yeah, one of the things that you had a couple of slides there about stakeholders. Well, from a campus in-house stakeholder perspective, everybody on the campus, but in particularly at my school, purchasing, the people who handle the bids and the bid opportunities and promote themselves as the point of contact. Not you, AV guy, it's us. If they don't follow through and do what their expectations are of them, the whole thing goes to hell relatively quickly in that relationship with the vendor. And who's left-handed the bag? The in-house people, because they're the point of contact for like a departmental room or a specialized room. And right now, we're doing that with our med school. The med school, ratio-wise, has more people working there to support their limited amount of classrooms than my team that supports the entire campus. So therefore, my guy, who's like the AVPM, for lack of a better term, has been their go-to and taking care of them for years. So we're trying to get them to change a little bit and look at it from the greater perspective. But it's just so interesting how the stakeholder role on each campus is different.
Yeah.
Very unique to each.
And I think that's where, going out of your way, right, as the AV manager to build relationships with integrators, even if they're not the ones consistently working with you, they can maybe loop you into that, right? Or at least give you the, slip under the table of like, hey, this is what's happening, even though you're not the point of contact for it, just so you can try and get ahead of it. But yeah, if the integrator is someone who just did a blind bid on a public website, right, and you've never worked with them, and then they win the bid, good luck. Like who knows where that'll end up, or how bad it'll be.
From the in-house perspective, what they do now becomes your not problem.
My problem?
It's my problem. You'll be supporting Chris, you and your crew.
So we'll be around. We can all happy to talk with anybody, later today or whatever on this. I do want to walk through a couple bits of documentation. I will say it early on in this process, the documentation stuff you're going to put together, the process of working with your procurement office, good point on that. The process of working with integrators. You will be bad at this at the beginning. You will be terrible. I am not good at some aspects of this. Check back in 5 or 10 years. I will get better at it, but it's constant improvement. So this has been years getting this far, and we're still not there. Anyway, as far as scopes of work, this is the sort of thing I generate for every single space I do. One of the other ones I left up there, but you saw I had a couple of rooms under there. I've gotten away from these rooms are all the same with these 27 exceptions, because that gets confusing. So even if the rooms are the same, the next round that we just closed out on this same project series, I documented every room separately. So I had 17 scopes of work, just a paragraph like this. Even if the room was like functionally identical, but like there's a different type of screen or whatever. I just wanted to make sure there was no confusion on, well, these 5 rooms are the same-ish sort of thing. So And then other stuff I'll put together is, so I do scope work for every space. I do device naming. I do want integrators to name my devices on campus. We have a process for this. I just had to go back and bark at the integrator who's currently doing work for us to point out that like half the devices in the room weren't named correctly. And they said, oh, whoops. And then they started to go take care of that. But this is just our campus standard. You may have a different one for how you name things. Oops, what do we got here? Oh, I see what's happening. Jimmie and his reverse scrolling. I do high-level wiring diagrams for every space where possible. I'll do rack elevations where possible. So all this will go out. Like I said, I appreciate when someone catches that I missed an audio line or something, but it's just there. And I'm a visual person. This helps me think through things. If you notice on here, one of my little things, I leave these behind. I leave myself little notes on these pages when I'm doing math for POE budgets, doing math for connections points. This was something that bit me in the ass about a year ago. A lot of these things are going into existing spaces. So there's existing, there's a floor poke or there's floor raceway or something. I couldn't get enough cables through there because I didn't think about that until we were in there actually laying cables in. So check all your raceway, check your floor devices. My favorite are the 8-inch Legrand floor devices that have like a 3/4 inch conduit on the bottom. Thanks, jerks. So yeah. I love those floor pokes, but thanks for the world's smallest conduit. So, because at the time, we only need one cable through there. So yeah, I do and the way I do this with procurement to allow substitutions and things, this is a suggested equipment list. This is not a bill of materials, but it's a bill of materials. Most integrators will recognize that and just bid you exactly what you want. But every now and then you get a question. Hey, here's a good one that came from an integrator. That model power supply for that device, we've had some issues with it. What if we swap that one over to a PoE injector, and then we use that? I'm like, all right, try that. So. I made him switch back, but comes up. Networking and programming scope. This comes from my team, just kind of on who's doing what and what we're doing. This is a high level one that goes out to bid. When we hand it off to the integrator, it's 12 pages long that identifies what we want done with every single device and broken down. And then I think this one I already had that one open. Yeah. The other thing I'm going to show you here, we've been building this out recently in projects. We've been calling it our room by room breakdown, but it is literally switch configs. It's another scope document. This is on a shared drive, which goes out to the install team. Open, please. So we take that initial scope of work, we just break it down thusly. This looks like it's a lot of work, but spread it out over your team, do it over time, and this takes you like 10 minutes sort of thing. So you also have templates and, alleviate some of the things like I don't need a camera mount there. I want this specific model camera mount to the color of the mount. Anyone done that with wrong model or wrong color cameras, projector mounts, things like that? Have architects come back and say change that, and you say no because who cares? But it happens. Free advice: projector poles. Use contact paper around them. Save you a whole bunch of time. Cable schedules, so we'll do documentation down to what type of cables we want going. We will find a lot of times integrators, I know you have your favorites, whether it's Liberty, Windy Wire, Belden, whoever it is, you have your favorites because you already have a warehouse full of it. I may have my favorite, I'm going to want you to use my favorite, or at least prove that your favorite is equivalent to mine, especially on cable radius, outer diameter, bend radius, all that stuff, because that plays into it when, hey, it's Cat 6 is Cat 6, right? Is it though? And the number of times I've had to explain to people that shielded and unshielded are not the same, so weird. So somebody used the excuse, well, we did unshielded because it's easier to pull. Yeah, well, what's harder to pull is pulling that back and redoing it. So we'll do a full cable schedule. This comes up, so I do a lot of stuff, by the way. I use X10 for a lot of this, and it generates a lot of this automatically, or let's say semi-automatically, and then it's like 20 minutes to go back through and clean this up, sort of thing. So I'm not writing this out from scratch. What else we got in here? We'll do front elevations in rooms where there's questions about where we want speakers next to doors or something like that. Try explaining this in an email on where you want that speaker, not near the door at a certain height, whatever. So look, here's a picture with arrows on it. So displays above whiteboards. I have a student working for me. He loves doing stuff in CAD, and so he went a little overboard on the lectern. My lecterns are a rectangle showing the width and the height, and that's it, because that's all you need. But he wanted to show everything, so he went all out. This was for the electricians have used a lot of this stuff for where they want wall boxes and things, so that's helpful. So any place you have it documented, the better. This has been a recent one for us. I don't know about it on your campuses, but open, please. Port layouts on devices. Jimmie and his reverse scrolling, it's freaking me out. What devices on the network switch go to what devices in the rack, what devices on a PDU go to what devices, that sort of thing. So they maintain some consistency. So you don't go into space, and port 3 should always be the, I don't know, control processor, for example. But in that case, port 3 actually was the LCD monitor, and it just makes life a little more difficult if you're doing some template-based programming. So let's see what else we got in here. Rack elevations, I showed you that earlier. By the way, from the integrator side, I fully welcome feedback. If you want to rearrange things in the rack, please let me know before you go do 12 of them, and then we have to have you change them back. But sometimes things are next to each other for a very specific reason, and I have proclivities. Yes, amplifiers used to always go on the bottom because they're big and heavy, but modern amplifiers are little and small and can go wherever I want them to, so please stop. You'd be surprised. And then finally, this one's just super helpful. Ignore the colorful lines. This was one of my engineers who was very happy with playing with how we can lay out different views on this. But you can turn off the layers and all that, but to just show general speaker layout and all that. But mainly this is to give people an idea of where I want stuff in a room. And this is an ideal scenario because God only knows what's above these ceilings. And as part of my process doing 150 rooms in 2 years, I am not going to every room and poking my head above every ceiling tile to see what's up there. In some of the older buildings in particular, I will do that. But in a lot of rooms like this, and in this building, I'd say this is new enough. I'm going to just say I want microphones here. And then if we can't put it there, we'll move it over a tile and I'll deal with it. So it's more to just kind of give general layouts on things like this. So so that's the level of documentation we'll hand off, and then we still get, even with this level of documentation, we still get rafts and rafts and rafts of questions, so, which I welcome. Oops, I went too far, Jimmie.
It's over.
I wanted this one. What, you and your keyboard? Oh, I broke it. Oh, sorry. Anyway, so happy to talk through any of that stuff. It is a process. Working with integrators is something that is a part of what we do. The better we are at it, the better they will appreciate what we're doing, and vice versa. So it is a partnership. I think we're over time at this point. I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes, but I know the next thing up is lunch, and everyone wants to get to that. So.
And if you want Met money, come up here. I'm handing out bills.
Give me all that Met money. So.
Thank
You guys.
Thank you.
Go get your net money.
What a place.